Welcome to Darklaw Dominion, where we dive deep into the shadows, the darkest parts of ourselves that we rarely speak of, yet we all feel. I'm your host, Dominion, and in this series, we're not afraid to face the raw truths of our mental health, the battles that rage within, and the weight we carry when no one else is watching. This is where we confront the fears, the pain, the trauma we hide, and uncover the power that lies within the darkness. Because only by facing it can we truly heal and rise. Let's take this journey together. Welcome to the depths of Darklaw Dominion.
Good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome to the Create Dominion podcast with your host, Dominion, and welcome to episode 10 of the Darklaw Dominion Mental Health Series. I am so excited to be bringing you a wonderful guest from the great mountain state of Colorado, Miss or Mrs. Alistair Hawks. And so just very, very honored and privileged to have this wonderful, very inspiring therapist on this platform, because for today's episode, and I won't steal her thunder, but we're really going to dive deep into a topic that's actually never been discussed here on the platform. And so just very excited for the guest and for everyone to really get some behind the scenes extended knowledge on what we'll be discussing today. And so before we get into all that, I know you guys are, excited to have season 2, the second half of season 2 back. You're probably like, hey, where you been, man? It's been about a month or so since the last drop. So I know you guys have been, waiting for that fresh drop of new episodes. And so very excited to bring you the second half of the mental health series. And so with that being said, Alistair, why don't you tell the audience who you are and how are you doing today?
Thank you so much, Dominion. I'm excited to be here too. I am a miss, and I grew up here in Colorado. It's amazing here. It's beautiful. I was raised by a single mother, which I'll just share because it was stressful growing up without enough guidance and enough attention. I mean, all of that was kind of, secondary to just survival, but it affected me deeply. I have some wonderful siblings, 3 siblings, and I've basically been in Colorado since I was 8 years old. And so that's almost half a century. And just all of the struggles that happen when you grow up in a single family or a single parent family, I experienced a lot of them. Neglect, some sexual abuse. I'm a sexual abuse survivor. And all of those experiences pushed me towards becoming a therapist. I was either going to be a teacher or I was going to be a therapist. And there was kind of a long and winding road to becoming a therapist, but having experience that needed healing kind of pointed me in that direction. So I'm happy to be here to share my story and some of my expertise with your listeners. Thanks for having me.
Thank you again. And again, I always start with the wonderful intro. And so I really want to encourage everyone to really, like I always say, journey inside the darkest part of the mind to reveal the true light that shines. And I really want everyone listening to really take one thing that is said here today that resonates with you to apply it daily to your life. And, we're going to talk about, stress management, and she's going to share, some of her personal story with surviving sexual assault and different things. And I really, especially when it comes to mental health, I just want to let everyone know that, you do matter. You're not a victim, you're a victor. And, I really encourage everyone listening to surround yourself with safe people. And like she mentioned, she did become a therapist. And I really want to, like I said, I'll let her share her personal testimony, but I really want to commend her for really overcoming. And not only did she heal herself, but she didn't keep her healing hidden just for her. She said, hey, I healed, I overcame my trials and tribulations, but I'm going to, again, how can I give back and how can I help other women and men and different individuals that maybe have went through the same or similar circumstances? Maybe even if it's not a sexual assault victim, maybe it's just, how many of us have grown up in single homes, at least for a part of our lives, right? Countless of us that are listening to this episode right now. And so a lot of us can resonate with that, including myself for a period of my childhood. And so you really just have to understand, that, hey, we're all human, and our mental health matters. And so I just want to encourage everyone just to really, take conviction over your mental health. And really, if you need to seek higher counsel, I empower you to do that regardless of whoever may be deterring you. With that being said, like I said, enough of this, my soapbox. I know you guys are ready for this wonderful episode 10. So with that being said, Stir, what kind of led you and inspired you the most to become a therapist?
Oh, goodness. I luckily, when we moved here to Colorado when I was really young, I was in third grade, my mom had some really excellent support and ended up getting a job at the Biofeedback Society. At that time, she was running meetings for the Biofeedback Society. And biofeedback is a strategy, it's a stress management strategy that helps people become aware of what's going on inside of their body. And so when I was 12 and my mom was working at the Biofeedback Society, I got to meet some of the attendees at some of the conferences that I went to just kind of help out and to be at because I was young and she was my mom. And I met some wonderful scientists and therapists who were using biofeedback. And one of the interesting things about biofeedback is it's a mindfulness technique, it's a mindfulness strategy. It's obviously bigger than that, but somebody taught me how to be mindful and how to use meditation to manage difficult feelings that I was experiencing when I was 12. And that changed my life greatly. So I would say that's one of the most early experiences I had that led me down this road. Later on, I went and got some biofeedback training when I was in my 20s, when I was working for my mom again at a different organization that had some of the people in the Biofeedback Society as members of it. And when I went and got my own biofeedback training, which I thought I was getting for creativity, I began to uncover some buried memories about earlier life experience, like getting sexually assaulted, that I had dissociated so completely during that experience that I barely remembered it, even though it changed my life greatly. So biofeedback helped me recognize that I'd had this adverse childhood experience that was affecting me greatly, and I didn't even know it. And so that's another thing that kind of led me down this road of becoming a therapist. Like, we have these experiences, we have this lived experience as human beings, and it's not always conscious. And when we have tools that help us become aware of the kinds of things that we experienced when we were young and help us resolve the associated feelings and tension and stress and anxiety, then we start to feel better and we get more and more aware and we get more and more conscious. And the more conscious we become, the more we can look around us and see all of the ways that we can participate and be in service of the world. So I would say that early biofeedback experience really pointed my compass in the direction of becoming therapist.
Wow, wow. What a powerful testimony. And one word you said that really stuck out of the many great things you just said is the word awareness. And the reason I want to break that down really quick for us in the audience is because um, a lot of times, just subconsciously, we really don't understand what we've went through. It was just talking about this today of, how many relationships or failed relationships, how many times have you been disrespected, assaulted, embarrassed in your life? How many foods have you tried that you hated and you just spit it out because of the texture, because of the taste, and you're like, I'll never have that again. And the reason I say that is because every experience that we have in our lives shapes I call it the confirmation bias, and it shapes how we view things within the world. So the reason why I love what she said, awareness, is that she's going through life. We're all human, we're all going through life. And subconsciously, there's just different things that we like or dislike, or there's different triggers. When I see the Notebook, why do I cry when I watch the Notebook? Like, it's, or the Green Mile, or, the Boy in Striped Pajamas, those are just some notably sad music. Or, why am I happy when I watch, Princess and the Frog? Why do you laugh when you watch stand-up comedy? If you really dive deep into, the brain and like the way humans are wired, it's, everything that you see that you like or dislike is shaped by an experience that you've had, preferably mostly at a younger age. And
Yeah.
so For me, mine is definitely oatmeal raisin cookies. The worst cookie in the world. I can't stay it. I just say that to make you guys laugh because everybody that I know like loves oatmeal raisin cookies, and I just will not. I won't try it. I won't eat it. I don't care if I'm
Mm.
28 years old now. I don't care if I'm 78. I will not try. If I'm 78, Lord allows me to live that long, and I'm in a nursing home or somewhere, and they try to give me an oatmeal raisin cookie, I guess that'll be the day I go home to see the Lord because I just won't try. I just won't eat an oatmeal raisin cookie. And so I say that, as a light laughter, just to really want the audience to understand how impactful, how powerful that testimony was with that awareness, because it's twofold. Because not only did she feel that she was aware, but she also, it's the application and what you do with the awareness. Knowledge in life is not about having knowledge. It's about applied knowledge and how you're, again, like she said in her testimony, how she can serve and impact the world and help other people. It's not about, you recognize it. I feel like, and I love what makes that so powerful is, a lot of times we recognize something, just you look at a car accident, you can see if the car's coming straight at you, you can see it, right? But do you have enough time to turn the wheel and move? Or do you have, enough time to avoid the accident? A lot of times you don't. And so just because you are aware of a car coming, or just, not to get, too morbid, but, if you see somebody with a gun, yeah, you're aware that, hey, he just pulled out a gun, but that might not, do you have enough time to react, to get out of the way, or to flee, or to not get injured? You may, or you may not. And so I love that she said awareness, because we all go through life and we just do different things, different triggers. You might break down and cry. It could be maybe the death of a family member. Maybe your grandparents died when you're young, or parents, or siblings, or, coworkers, friends, etc. Just different things. You might see a picture of something that might remind you of that lost loved one, and you might shed a quick tear, or kind of break down, or get anxious. And I just want the audience to understand, like, that is part of your awareness that she mentioned. And to move forward is, okay, once you see that awareness, I hope you guys were really listening to her testimony. She applied that and was able to heal, and now she's helping others do the same. And so I just really want everyone listening to understand that, there's a reason why things happen. So as she continues to, walk with us through, stress management, and how she, applied that awareness, I really want you to think in your mind, um, there's something, I want to say this real quick, is there's something on your mind as you're listening to this episode. Maybe it's the promotion that you want at your job. Maybe it's that relationship. Maybe you're afraid to ask someone on that date. Maybe you're wanting to buy a house. Maybe you want to buy a car, or, should I do this? Should I do that? There's somebody, there's many of us right now listening as she speaks. And, I just believe she's going to break some barriers for you on managing that stress. Or maybe you already have, maybe you're listening, you're like, hey, I make six figures, I'm already a manager, I already, I got the car, I got this, 3-car garage, I got all that. And well, maybe you're stressed out, and maybe you're just like, how do you manage that? And so she's going to help us through that. And as she's doing that, I just want you guys to, again, thinking about your own, what's that obstacle that you're trying to get over? And what is that pivotal moment that you have now been made aware of. And, Alistair is going to help you break through to actually apply that. And so with that being said, can you walk us through, when you first like notice that awareness? Because I really love your story, and it's going to be a great episode, because just with domestic violence, sexual assault, any kind of trauma, especially hard trauma like that, the reason why I highlighted awareness for the audience is because it takes a lot of people, sometimes their whole life, to even be aware. And so the fact that you were able to be aware quick, relatively quickly, and pivot to be successful, is very powerful story. And so I want, the audience to really hear, some steps to really expedite that awareness. Because maybe there's some people listening right now, they have that trauma, and they're like, now that she just said that, I was, beat on as a kid, or maybe, bullied at school. And so I'll let you walk through, kind of how you found that.
Absolutely. You mentioned a couple of words that I think are really important. You mentioned trigger and just helping people understand that anytime you kind of get activated, anytime your nervous system starts to be a part of your emotional expression or your mental functioning. Sometimes when we're emotionally triggered, we really lose access to our critical thinking and we go into fight, flight, or freeze mode. You mentioned that a little bit ago as well. And these are all triggers that kind of bring up the reminiscent feelings of the traumatic life experiences that we've all had. I mean, I think trauma really is one of those really big learning opportunities. And I took a trauma training a few years ago where the guy said that 93% of humans will experience trauma, but only 7% of those people will actually develop stress disorders. And that speaks to the resilience of people. People are elastic. They bend versus breaking. It takes a lot of kind of chronic stress to break somebody down. And so anyway, after biofeedback training, I and that awareness started to develop, it got me interested in learning again. I got out of high school. I feel like I escaped high school without a whole lot of enjoyment or personal fulfillment. And having this new awareness following biofeedback training really made me interested in learning about myself and figuring out how all of those traumatic experiences or the lack of guidance that I had when I was younger, just the lack of personal efficacy, this ability to go out and be successful in the world, that didn't come until much later after a whole lot more learning. Anyway, so working on your trauma, learning strategies to do that is very, very important because, like you said, some people never become aware. And I would say the sooner you can become aware of what's bothering you, of what's subconsciously directing your life, a lot of those experiences, memories, energies are buried in the psyche. And so we have to spend time with ourselves so that we can discover what it is that's messing us up, what it is that's tripping us up or getting in the way of us reaching our goals.
Perfect. And like I love everything you said because again, it's really, focusing on that healing and really being convicted and intentional on, okay, now that I'm aware, what's the next step? And, really again, when I say conviction is being, hey, I'm like, no, nobody's gonna stop me. Like, hey, I'm aware, I got it. Yeah, I'm going to seek help. Like, the appointment's already booked, or and that's the difference between I talked earlier about commitment versus conviction. So commitment is the way I like to describe the difference is commitment is really easily it's kind of like the wind, right? If all your friend I always say, that's why I say surround yourself with safe people. If all your friends are fit on a diet, they go to the gym, they do yoga, and you're eating chips on your bedroom or in your couch, and you're gained 20 pounds the past 3 weeks, and they say, hey, you should work out with us, or go on a diet, you can say, yeah, you're right. I'm gonna stop eating fast food for a week. That's a commitment due to your circumstances and those around you. And a lot of times as humans, we're influenced by our outlying factors. But with conviction, that's when you find it in yourself to look in the mirror. And I always say it always ends and begins with you, the conviction. And what I love about Alistair's story is it's the conviction that she saw in herself, like, hey, this happened to me and I am going to heal from this. And that's what I want the audience to understand. The difference is not, she didn't say, oh, well, my mom, Pat gave me a hug and I cried and she said I should get counseling, or I read a book, or I saw Law and Order, Olivia Benson, my favorite show. I saw Olivia Benson, emotional episode that triggered me, so I'm going to get help. It's, that's where the commitment starts, but the conviction starts when you see it for yourself to really say, I will not be denied on this. I must, I can, I will, I must attitude, not, hey, well, if my friends, they start drinking and they start going to the gym, then I'm done because they don't want to do it anymore. It's like, no, well, if all my friends block my number tomorrow, I'm going to the gym in the morning. And so that's the difference of mindset that it takes to go from that commitment to that conviction. And so I really, like I said, just want to encourage, continue, as I started the episode with, really think about your own obstacle that you're trying to get over. We've talked, just really quickly through the episode so far, we've, listed probably, you know, examples that at least 90% of the world face, whether it's relationships, whether it's trauma. Again, she just said, 93% of humans face trauma. And again, 93%, so 93% of us have something to either that we're aware of or that we need to gain awareness of. And so 7% of those, as she said, develop to where they're just broken and they need, serious, mitigation and help. And so, again, to her point, what she's saying is, the other side of that 7% is, you got to wear and you can prosper, you can move on. And so, what I just want to encourage anyone that's, been a victim of trauma. Again, like I said at the beginning, you are the victor. It ends and begins in you. You don't have to, let that define you. And so, one of the things I want to ask you, Alistair, is, I know we're talking about safe people, and what was kind of your, mindset? What kind of people were you around when you were going through this healing journey? Well, what kind of tips would you give the audience for, who to have in your corner when going through your healing?
Yeah, that's a great question. Who to have in your corner when you're going through your healing? Good people. Find mentors. When I was going through my traumatic early life experience, I was not hanging around good people. I was not aware. I was kind of asleep to how life was negatively affecting me and just kind of in a survival mode. And I'm sure everybody who's listening to your podcast has experienced that at least for short periods of time. When I started on my healing journey, I was working at an organization that was publishing literature on how consciousness affects healing. What role does consciousness play in healing and wellness? And so I was really lucky. I was surrounded by people who were interested in wellness, and I was reading literature. And because my job at this organization was to manage the membership, and the membership was always sending in information on healing and wellness, the strategies that they were using in their offices or what they were using to heal themselves. And so I was exposed to a lot of healing modalities. How I like to find teachers now, that was in my 20s and I'm in my 50s, I ask excuse me, I ask the universe for help. I just say, thank you, universe, for sending me a teacher for this problem. And then I just kind of see who shows up. I open the local magazine or I do a Google search, this problem in my area near me, and see who pops up. And then I go down the list and I see kind of who pops out at me. That's my method. And I have always found really, really good people, whether they're mentors or teachers or therapists or trainings, classes. This is the way that I like to align with the universe. I let the universe kind of guide me. And if somebody here is listening and they know that they've been through a traumatic event, whether it's far in the past or it's recent past, find somebody to talk to about it. Somebody that you trust a lot, that will be able to hear what it is that you're saying. If you are not sure that this person is trustworthy and will hear you and will validate and support you, you probably want to find somebody else. You don't want to be talking to somebody who's discounting your experience or who's telling you, no, that didn't happen, or who's gaslighting you, or who's trying to control the narrative. That is not support. That is not validation. Validation feels like, oh my gosh, that's awful. So when you're sharing your deepest, darkest experiences with people and they can tell you, oh my gosh, that's awful, that is support. And you want to be surrounded by people who can hold you. You don't want to lean on everybody for them to fix your life for you, but you do want to be able to find people who can help you stand up straight when the wind is really strong. And recovering from traumatic life experience is tricky. Not everybody gets to the finish line on that because it's very hard work. It means you have to look inside and you have to look at the habits that kind of got created to adapt to whatever that experience is. And if your adverse childhood experience happened when you were very, very young, a lot of times that we don't have memories of what happened when we were very, very young. I did not have a memory of this, and it happened when I was 12, the traumatic event that I spoke about. But dissociation causes us to not be able to remember these things. If you know something's happened, but you don't know what, I would say just go find somebody to talk to. Open up the Google, look online. There are so many therapists online. Don't do therapy online. Don't do AI therapy online. Don't do that. Talk to a real person. Healing happens in a real relationship.
I love the way you said that because you said something earlier about being blind and not seeing, and that reminded me of this song. And just the quick like verse of the song, it was just said, I finally opened up my eyes to realize that you're all blind. And another song that's one of my favorites is it was like called about Sunset on the Empire by Arch Enemy, and they just said, thousands of years and what have we learned. And those two just quick little segments of those songs, are very powerful because, again, a lot of times if you just really just observe, a lot of times, I just observe people around me, whether it's, out in public, whether it's on the job, just really observe. And I want to encourage the audience to really try to understand people. It's very, I kind of addicted to it now. It's very, whether it's your coworkers, your family, your friends, really kind of ask those hard questions. I love what, Alistair, I love what you said about, hey, you're going to die. I said in the beginning, dive deep into the darkest parts of your mind to reveal the true light that shines. I love that what Alistair said is, this is hard, bitty shadow work. It's hard, gritty. You're going to cry. You're going to get mad. You're going to want to punch the wall. You're going to want to, jump off the roof. Like, it's very hard. It's mesmerizing. It's very difficult. You're going to lose friends. You're going to lose family. People are going to look at you crazy. They're going to be like, you're crazy. You need to go to get evaluated mentally, like, what's wrong with you? Like, even if you're still have communication with your oppressor, or, there's still, maybe it was a family member, uncle or something, whether it's domestic violence or, kind of sexual violence or trauma, they might even, gaslight, like she said earlier, like, oh, I didn't hurt you that bad, or that was 20 years ago, leave it in the past, leave it alone. And again, it goes back to what I said about conviction. Like, this is not their healing, it's your healing. I'm going to heal for me. It's not about what you did or didn't do, or what you should have said or what you shouldn't have said. This is about me and my healing. So really get selfish with your healing. I would say get selfish with your healing. And like Alistair said, again, it's nasty, hard, gritty shadow work. And I love that she said that because, a lot of times, I really want to break this down real quick. A lot of times, not just with podcasts, because we live in like a social media, TikTok-y, Instagram-y, Facebook-y age where a lot of times we seek, like she said earlier, that false validation. And when you get that validation, like when she was speaking about when when the people around you say, oh my God, that's awful, you really want real validation from people that care. And a lot of times on social media, we see that awareness, like I spoke of earlier. And then like I said, I encourage you to do what she said. She said she Googled and found a real person because healing begins with communication and connection. And that was so powerful because a lot of times we are aware. And I speak to, I know a lot of it is, domestic violence and sexual assault relationships. And, there's somebody listening to this episode right now that's in a relationship they should not be in and they're trying to escape from. And, you are aware of it. And the reason why I want to break that down is because a lot of times that TikTok-y age is we don't realize how hard that healing process and leaving and that shadow work is. And we look for those quick little 30-second TikTok videos. Yeah, you got it. You're powerful. Leave. And you just kind of get that. We want that like quick eye popping, like TV show quote to like, give us that jolt of empowerment and energy. And it goes right back to what we've been saying earlier. That's when you become committed. That's that, oh, I see them people in the gym. I see my friends at the gym. Oh, my best friend from high school, I used to have to buy her Taco Bell when we got drunk, and now she's a CEO of a multi-million dollar company. I got to get a better job. That's that commitment. But what Alistair, I love what she said is, hey, when you're in the darkest part of yourself and the kids are, at school, your mom's, off, with your dad or with your stepdad, with her husband, or, off living life vacationing. And when you're, and I love using nighttime because when you're in bed alone at night, or a lot of times, even with you're with somebody, you're still alone at night. And when you close your eyes, it's just you and you. And that's why I said always ends and begins in you. And there is no TikTok when you're in the darkest part of yourself. There is no lighting. There is no Facebook. There is no, LeBron James or quote that you can just pull out of a Nike box and just get empowered by. Again, like she said, it's going to be gritty, nasty. You're going to cry. You're going to want to, fight the world. You're going to want to scream out to the top of your lungs. And I really, really appreciate you, Alistair, for really I really hope that I think that opens somebody's eyes because they're like, oh, this is easy. He's been beating me for years, or, I just can't leave. Or, I've been getting molested or, touched for my whole life and I just can't overcome. And I just want to empower someone like, hey, just know it's going to be hard, but choose your heart is what I would say.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite movies, The Equalizer, the first one, I remember when the lady, she was a young girl getting trafficked and she was complaining about her circumstance. I remember Denzel Washington looked her in the eye and said, change your world. And so I encourage, just like what we've been saying all episode, really what Alistair said is go to that Google, go to the library. If you can't do it at home, a lot of times your home is your prison. It should be your peace. Stay late at work, on your lunch break at work, maybe take a little snack and, research, sometimes, and it really doesn't have to do necessarily with trauma, but just, for a break. Sometimes, for my lunch break at work, I'll book a haircut appointment and just won't even eat, like just go get my haircut at the barber shop and take a couple extra 15 minutes for myself and then go back to work. Do that for yourself with, maybe take a quick little video call with your therapist. Like, hey, I'm just going to talk to you for 30 minutes and vent. Like Alistair said, like, just get it out, talk to somebody. And so, I appreciate, you for really diving deep into, the really framework of how to heal. And so with that being said, I'll let you speak on, how we, stress manage and what are some tips? Because I know everybody's been listening for about half an hour or so and they're like, this is great, but how do we apply it? We're on the outside looking in, like, how do we apply it just, as we're moving through our daily lives?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. Stress management, like I said, I fell into it because it was around me, luckily. And even though I'd had adverse childhood experience, I was open enough to listen. I was listening to the things that were going on around me, the healthy things that were going on around me, where when adults were talking about health and wellness and consciousness, and that kind of it permeated my being. And so what I've learned from a really young age is to be aware, to do whatever you can to become conscious. There are so many tools for this, like journaling or like sitting for 5 minutes and doing some self reflection in between clients or on your break or whenever that is. So, self reflecting, writing down your thoughts, externalizing those things that are kind of mulling around in your mind. If you've got these trains of thought that just keep going and going and going, but they're not really productive trains of thought. If you've got some loops set up in your brain where you're continuously thinking about these bad experiences, that is a symptom of trauma. And you want to try to externalize those thoughts by writing them down, by talking to other people about them. I also want to just have people guard against repeating traumatic stories over and over again because they can be re traumatizing. If anybody has had the experience of telling the story over and over again, it's actually activating your nervous system in exactly the same way that your nervous system got activated during the initial trauma. So you don't want to be just talking about this story over and over and over again. You want to have somebody help you make sense of it. Develop hobbies that you love. Have experiences that offset any of the adverse experiences that you've had in your life. Learn how to do things that are very nurturing and nourishing, like gardening or playing. I know a lot of adults who don't know how to play. Play is fun. Play is how children's brains develop. But just because we grow older doesn't mean that we lose this need for play and for this kind of unstructured time. The modern world does not offer us very many opportunities for unstructured time. You really have to make your own unstructured time. And by being unstructured, I mean not having anything on your list, like just having a day or an hour or a half a day where you don't have anything on your to-do list. That can be unstructured time. For somebody who hasn't taken the time to look inside and doesn't necessarily know what's there, that can sometimes be scary time. It's like what you said earlier, Dominion, is when you go to sleep at night, it's you and you. I like to think it's you and the creator. It's me and the creator. And how is my relationship with me? How's my relationship with the universe? And starting there, like, what do I need to do to take better care of myself? Oh, I need to walk away from this relationship. Well, then walk away. There's the conviction. So developing your awareness and then filling your time with things that are different than the things that continually make you feel stressed out or make you feel tense or make you feel upset. Fill your time with other things. If you have a job that you don't like, make a different choice. Choose your hard. We all have to work, but maybe there's a different choice that you can make and find some work that would be more meaningful to you. I mean, these are all just little things that we can do on a daily basis to manage our stress. And then there are other things like the big guns. I like to talk about practices and strategies that are super helpful. The first strategy that I teach to every single one of my students and clients is taking deep breaths. We talk about how breathing, how conscious breathing helps us clear our mind and it helps us get really present in our bodies. And when we're present in our bodies with a clear mind, we can see what's in our heart. We can actually see new possibilities for ourselves. So taking a few deep breaths in the morning before you get out of bed, at noon, and at night before you're stressed out. This is the biggest thing that I like to emphasize with people. You want to practice strategies before you actually need them, because then when you need them, you're already skilled to use this strategy. If you don't practice breathing on a regular basis and then you end up in a stressful situation, you're not going to remember to breathe. You're going to fall back into your own stress, your old habits for stress management, which might be dissociation, which might be, risk-taking behavior. It might be doom scrolling on social media or whatever it is that you do when you don't want to be aware of what's going on inside of you. You'll fall back into those old patterns. Developing new patterns takes time and effort. It takes you being able to focus your awareness on where you want to go versus getting stuck where you're already at. And so there are tons and tons of strategies that you can use. I encourage all of my clients and students to make a list of 50 coping strategies, because when you're in a situation where the world is blowing up or imploding or exploding around you, you want to have enough things on your coping strategy list so that you can go down the list. Maybe the first one didn't work and the second one didn't work and the third one didn't work, but by the time you get to the 12th one, you're starting to feel better. And these can be everything from taking a hot bath, having a cup of tea, talking with a friend, going out and looking at the flowers, going on a hike. There are so many things that help us manage our stress. I could talk about this for probably 10 episodes, but I just want to encourage people to find things that they love to do and that are easy for them to do. Stress management does not require special equipment. You have lungs right inside of you that you can start using to breathe. Your awareness is one of the biggest tools that you have, and surrounding yourself with safe people, like Dominion said, and then figuring out what makes you happy, what lights you up.
I love everything you said there. And, really, really want to encourage the audience, to take heed to that advice and really, I love what you said right at the end is really find your purpose, find your why, and make sure it's in alignment, with, the higher power, and make sure, you are very convicted on what you should do with your life. And so really, really cool shift for the first time ever on the Creative Dominion. We're going to kind of speak on stress management from the other side. And so a lot of mental health is, we've spoken, not just this episode, but I know you guys have listened to tons of podcasts about safe people and seeking higher counsel and different kinds of therapy, brain spotting, neurological, handle therapy. There's so many subcategorizations and so many, like she said, the list of 50 coping, methods. There's books, there's, resources, etc. And you're probably like, all right, these therapists, these psychologists, these people that are helping me are awesome. But what do they go through, or what's it like trying to be human like everybody else and also helping other humans? And so Alistair's gonna really dive deep into how she utilizes her coaching and teaching to really help those heroes, or I like to call them the Clark Kents and the Supermans,
Yeah.
how she helps them, compartmentalize and really, help heal themselves while helping to heal all of us. And so I'll let you roll on how you utilize that.
Yeah, thanks, Dominion. During COVID, I experienced a huge influx of new clients on my caseload as a therapist. And we were doing therapy online for the very first time. And interestingly enough, at that time, online, I started to get a lot of therapists as clients. Therapists, nurses, teachers, school psychologists, all of these people who are out in the world helping other people were now really starting to feel the effects of the stressful time that the entire world was going through at that time. In my own family, my daughter was online trying to finish high school. She was in her junior year when all of that craziness went down. And I misread her behavior. She just looked like she was doing a great job staying on top of everything. And I realized about a year later that she was quietly imploding with perfectionism. And she looked really good on the outside, but she wasn't doing very good on the inside. And because I was so focused helping other providers help their people, I missed the signs that my own daughter was struggling, which blew my mind. Like, how could I miss that? And so I restructured my practice, and I just decided that I was going to move out of doing one-to-one therapy and into teaching classes to educators, to therapists, to people who are helping people in the community and helping them learn how to stress manage and how to remember to use these tools that they're teaching to people every single day, how to remember to apply them in their own lives. Therapists, doctors, medical people, EMTs, nurses, teachers, we all experience stress. And sometimes when you're a caregiver, you put your own stress aside and then you don't have enough internal resource to manage your own stress. You're just giving and giving and giving and giving and giving. And one day you wake up and you realize that you overgave or that you gave too much or that you're depleted yourself. And so one of the things that I love to do is help therapists fill up their own bucket again and teach them how to have their list of 50 coping strategies. And I use a really revolutionary curriculum called Hike for Evolution. I teach this to everybody who I teach anything to, and it's a combination of somatic practice, which is body centered psychotherapy, or we'll just say movement based or body awareness strategies, mindfulness, meditation, using visual imagery, using things like tapping and energy medicine as a system of self-development for you to either for those people that I help to either overcome stress and anxiety and overwhelm and burnout, or to go from a state of good to better and best to become all that they want to be. So I really love working from an empowerment model. And interestingly enough, the empowerment model helps people recover and then helps them propel themselves, helps them go from Clark Kent to Superman.
I just love everything you said, and it really, you actually already kind of said it, and what you really were alluding to is you can't pour from an empty cup,
Yeah.
especially in leadership, and especially when trying to, like you say, you're trying to be the Superman and put your cape over the building that's about to explode and make sure nobody falls out or gets, crushed by debris. And what you said, I love that you were vulnerable and shared your own personal story, because you said something, and it's very humble to say, especially from a professional. And I really, really hope every audience member that's listening and viewing really heard that. And she said, again, if you've been following us the whole episode, she's been around these people since she was, 12 years old. And she's been, doing this therapy and coaching and teaching for over 20 years. And yet, again, like she said, her cup was so empty from helping everyone else. The person that's right next to her own daughter, the person right in front of her, she couldn't see. And so I really love that you shared that, because I really want it to be a humbling experience for all of us listening, and not just from a therapy background, but just as a parent and just as a professional, wherever you're listening or tuning in from, whatever your profession is. It doesn't even have to be your work profession. Maybe you're great at playing the piano, or you could teach guitar lessons, on the side. Whatever your profession, whatever you're best at, that you're helping other people help with, just, take that moment to, really humble yourself and realize that no matter how good you are, at what you do, you can't see everything. Only God can see everything. And so, I love that you shared that, because it really opens the eyes that, hey, you really have to manage a balanced workload and work-life balance. Because how many, people listening, how many divorces or how many family relationships, or how many people, maybe it's coworkers, maybe it's friends, maybe it's people you see in a grocery store. How many people have you seen that maybe even if they had a great childhood and a great life, how many people have you seen them or heard them say, I had everything growing up, but I never saw my dad because he was always at work, or I never saw my mom because she was always at helping others, or, I never got to spend. I mean, I love that you said that, because especially, not just healthcare and therapy, but even school teachers. I commend anybody listening that is a school teacher, or, in the education system. But, I really hope you take what she said in her personal testimony. I would take it again, be convicted personally. And at the beginning of the episode, I said, take one thing and resonate. Well, I encourage anybody here, that is in professional leadership role helping others, to check on your own, they always say, build your roof before it rains. Well, check on your own family. That's your homework for, tonight's episode. Check on, if you have kids, check on your daughter or son. Maybe it's a dog, maybe it's a pet. When's the last time you spent some time with your dog or cat, and really, like, just like she said, take that unscheduled, unauthorized time. Like, hey, just take half a day off of work and go take your dog to the dog park in the sun, and just go get doggy ice cream, and you can get Dairy Queen or whatever, and, just have a good, time with your dog, and just play all day. Like she said, adults still need to play. And really just, again, encouraging the audience to, look in the mirror and just see, like, hey, regardless of how good I am, you might be the best surgeon listening, or you might be the best basketball player, or you might be the head of the Teachers Association, or you might be the best principal in the United States. But, if your own son or daughter can't talk to you because you're always so busy, and they're the main ones struggling with their grades, again, that means, hey, maybe I should, talk to my own kids. And real quickly, another thing too is, whether it's the preacher's kids, the teacher's kids, how many of those people do you know, in your life, whether you went to school with them or work with them? Like, yeah, growing up, my dad was a pastor, or mom was a teacher. And, we've all seen those. Sometimes some of those kids might not be the best kids, or they might not be the smartest, or, something might happen. They kind of fall from grace. And you're like, but that like how do they end up on drugs, or how do they, why are they working at McDonald's at 32 and their mom was like the best, you know, athlete, or she was, the head of the school board. She was a superintendent of the school. She made $200,000 a year. Why, you had, I remember when, maybe you came from a single parent home. It's like, I remember when I used to wear hand-me-down clothes and she had the new Birkenstocks, the new, handbags. She came to school. She got a car at 16, got her license, and she used to pick me up from school. My mom worked 2 shifts, and now she's, working at McDonald's, and we're the same age. And, a lot of times, and that's why I said, earlier, to really study people's mindset, because a lot of times we try to compare ourselves and look at, circumstances that we can't control and say, oh, well, they're rich, so they got it, or their parents are professionals, so they got it. But not everybody carries that same mindset. And so really just check on your people and check on those closest to you, as you're helping others. And so with that being said, what is your best, favorite success story for someone you work with?
Oh my gosh, there are so many. I feel so grateful that I have a huge well to pull a story out of. I've helped thousands of clients and thousands of students, children in schools, in elementary schools, in the community. And there are a couple of people that I'm working with right now who've been working on themselves really diligently for the past few years, applying these skills from the Hike Revolution system and overcoming things like depression and anxiety. Like depression, lifelong depression starts to resolve after you begin using a certain skill set for as short of a period of time as 6 weeks. If you are willing to devote 3 to 7 minutes a day to a certain skill set, to developing a certain skill set, you can overcome things like depression. So I've helped this person overcome lifelong depression. I've helped this other person overcome lifelong anxiety, from living in a foreign country when they were little and being in a boarding school because their father was a care provider in the area where they worked, and feeling neglected and left behind, and all of these things that we carry forward from our childhood. And then we land on some therapist's couch in Colorado and they teach us a skill set, and all of a sudden, wow, my anxiety starts to feel different. And so I'll just say that there are so many things that we can do to overcome trauma, to overcome depression, to overcome anxiety, to overcome just not knowing how to have healthy relationships. Maybe it wasn't one event for you. Every single one of my clients comes here with a different need. I do serve a lot of people who have anxiety and overwhelm and burnout, but I'll say those 2 clients that I highlighted right there are the current success stories who are still kind of hovering in my periphery. Yeah, I've helped youth corrections kids. That's really inspiring. I actually did mentor an 11-year-old until they aged out of the system, and that was really fulfilling to be an adult for somebody who didn't have an adult in their life. Yeah, there are so many ways to serve, and I feel blessed that my trauma has turned into my tool.
Awesome. Again, like I said, just been, a wonderful, wonderful episode with Alistair Hawks out of the wonderful state of Colorado. So many great tools, so many great impactful tips and tricks. And I really want to hone in as we bring it home. Really, really be convicted, and really, do your homework, check on those closest to you. And what I'll say, and I'll let Alistair close with any last minute tips and motivation and her, where you could find her. Because again, I really want to challenge everyone to really, look at, really get in touch with her and really follow her, on her social medias, and really look into her website as well, and really look into those techniques that were discussed here in the episode. Again, like we said at the very beginning, now she has made every one of us aware. And now it's up to you to follow up. And with that being said, I really want to encourage everyone to really dive deep into that darker side, and really don't be afraid of the dark, and really just, heal. I really encourage everyone to heal. And so with that being said, any last minute encouragement or things for the audience, and also tell them where they could find all these tools and tricks as well.
Absolutely. One of the best things that I can encourage everybody to do is to just keep going. Keep working on yourself. Keep looking. You will, I promise you, if you keep looking and you keep solving those inner conflicts, you will find the silver lining. It's not going to come expectedly. It's not going to come in an expected way. You're not going to be able to time it. You're not going to be able to say, on this day, I'm going to be healed. But just keep looking for that silver lining, because our life experience, this adversity, is meant to crack us open so that we can see the truth of who we are. You can find me on alistairmhawks.com. There's a burnout checkup. If you're curious about your level of overwhelm, you can take the burnout checkup. You can look at my school. I have a school platform where I offer classes on self-development. There are these spirals of self-development, spirals 1 through 9, and some breathwork classes. And I teach a weekly master class. You can find that on my website too, and that's for free. You can come learn some of these tools in a community of like-minded people. And I'm on Instagram, Alistair M. Hawks. I'm on Facebook, Alistair M. Hawks, LinkedIn, all of the things. And I look forward to meeting some of you.
Awesome, awesome. And so again, thank you guys for, diving deep into the deepest parts of your mind to reveal the true light that shines. Again, I want to encourage everyone, we're going to share this, as it releases, but really, really, really check that website out. And really, if you are encouraged, or if you're, I really want to really quickly speak to anyone that has been a victor of assault or anxiety or depression or any of the topics that have been discussed. If you feel free to reach out to her, if any questions you have for just feedback or any encouragement or upliftment that was felt here today at the episode. And again, really, really being convicted and intentional on your healing. Be selfish. Just like how we buy new Jordan shoes and new Coach bags when we wait outside for 20 hours for the new release, why won't you wait inside your own soul for your own release? So again, thank you guys for, attending episode 10. It's been Dominion and Alistair Hawks. And until next time on the Creative Dominion podcast, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me on this journey into the depths of Darklaw Dominion. Remember, it's in the darkest parts of ourselves that we often find the greatest strength. Facing that darkness is not a sign of weakness, it's the path to healing, growth, and reclaiming control of your life. If this series resonates with you, or if you're looking for more empowering stories on healing and reclaiming your power, make sure to follow Decree of Dominion on Facebook, Spotify, and YouTube. There, we continue the conversation on mental health, domestic violence, and relationships, offering hope and support. Until next time, keep exploring the shadows, keep seeking your truth, and keep fighting for your light.